Opioid autonomy, safe in your arm. Our campaign aims to underline the damage from the war on drugs and to promote awareness of racial inference. This played-out mentality has perpetuated and continues in the media. The way different drug use is portrayed, we seek to destigmatize all drug use. To achieve this level, we aim to highlight benefits of opioids for personal use with consideration in the effectiveness of newly proposed safe injecting sites. By challenging narratives motivated by division along the lines of who uses what, we hope to inspire an autonomy of drug users that may ultimately end in them overcoming their addiction once they've realized they are not necessitated by their identities. A particularly poignant article published to the National Health Institute, written by Drs. Julie Netherland and Helena B. Hansen, illuminates the stark contrast between the number of media coverage and press descriptions of Black and Latino heroin users versus the sympathetic descriptions of white prescription opioid users. This divergence in narratives, they claim, has helped to result in a distinction between urban heroin use with suburban and rural prescription opioid use that has stretched beyond the symbolic and into a palpable inequality in the concentration of and severity of legal recourse. A distinction they liken to that made between crack cocaine and powder cocaine in the 1980s and 1990s. This distinction, they say, reinforces the racialized deployment of the war on drugs and is sustained by the lack of explicit discussion of race in the service of color, blind ideology. Netherland and Hansen find in their research that news reports of urban Latino and Black drug use and drug-related crime tend to neglect to mention any information pertaining to their backstories or family histories, and have a routine link to violence, which they say has dehumanizing effect on their population. On the other hand, Netherlands and Hansen find that suburban or rural white drug use and crime is dismally reported by media outlets as something shocking, and that the accounts often go into detail about the person's family, mental health, and general backstory. In any case, drug use among Blacks and other minority groups is simply expected and is reported as such, while drug use, especially opioid use among whites, is something that they were caused. Is reported as being due to conditions that push them into it. This is exacerbated by whites being prescribed opioids more readily than minorities. We are more likely to be undertreated for conditions like pain. As a result of this disparaging narratives, we've effectively been met only with more rigorous punitive measures against doctors who prescribe opioids, as the whites who are disproportionately affected by the epidemic have not been criminalized the way minorities have. Groups have been the way minority groups have been. Decriminalization, however, may serve to curb things like neighborhood-based racially stratified stop and frisk policies, as Netherland and Hansen describe them, as well as dismantle the war on drugs mentality that has helped to form this sort of predatory legal discrimination, as well as enabled majority white opioid use to become an epidemic in the case of urban opioid use, though coverage is almost always centered at heroin. Research has found that most young heroin users first use prescription opioids. Also worth noting is that rural opioid users die from opioid-related overdoses at twice the rate of urban opioid users. This is likely due to the lack of access to opioid agonist treatments, which have proven to be cost-effective as well as effective treatment-wise. It is the opinion of the campaign that stigmatizing of drug use among different ethnic groups also leads to reluctantly to treatment. By increasing access to opioid maintenance therapies, regardless of the limitations of a patient's insurance plan or mental health history, we'd like to see a decline in mortalities in urban, rural, suburban areas like this.